At some point, you stopped looking forward to things. Not dramatically, not all at once, just quietly. A movie you used to love now plays in the background while you scroll. A food you once craved tastes like nothing. A conversation you'd have killed for 3 years ago now feels like effort. And the strangest part? You don't feel sad about it. You feel nothing. That flatness is what this is about. Not depression, not burnout. Something more specific. Something that's been quietly rewiring you for years without you ever naming it. And the uncomfortable thing, by the time you finish this video, you're gonna realize you helped build it. There's a psychologist named Kent Berridge at the University of Michigan who spent years studying pleasure in the brain, and what he found contradicts almost everything we assume about how enjoyment works. He discovered that the brain uses two completely separate systems for wanting something and liking something. Two systems, independent of each other. The wanting system runs on dopamine. It's the one that pulls you forward, makes you reach for your phone, scroll, click, order, swipe. It's hungry, urgent, never satisfied. The liking system is something quieter, opioid-based. It's the thing that actually registers pleasure when you arrive somewhere. Here's what Berridge found, and this is where it turns disturbing. You can completely destroy the liking system in a rat and leave the wanting system fully intact. The animal will still chase food, still press levers obsessively, still perform every behavior associated with desire. But when it gets what it was chasing, it registers nothing. Sound familiar? That's not a metaphor. That's a neurological description of what happens when you spend years consuming content, food, entertainment, and stimulation optimized for engagement rather than satisfaction. The wanting keeps firing. The liking goes quiet. You're still chasing. You've just forgotten what arriving feels like. Drop a comment right now. When's the last time you genuinely looked forward to something? Not scrolled toward it, when you actually looked forward to it. There's a detail about David Fincher, the director of Fight Club, 7, The Social Network, that most people gloss over. He's notorious for demanding 50, sometimes 100 takes of a single shot, not because his actors are bad, because he's chasing something he calls the behavior underneath the behavior, the moment an actor stops performing and starts existing inside the scene. The reason that detail matters here is this. Fincher's films are deeply uncomfortable to watch. There's no score telling you how to feel. The pacing is cold, the silence is long, and yet they stay with you for days. Because genuine experience requires resistance. A scene that makes you work, that withholds, that pauses, that gives you silence, actually activates deeper cognitive and emotional processing than one designed to constantly reward you. The brain doesn't treasure what comes easily. But we've spent years eliminating resistance from our daily experience. Shorter videos, faster cuts, infinite scroll, one-click everything, preloaded playlists, recommendation algorithms that never ask you to choose. Every friction point removed was supposed to make life better. What it actually removed was the feeling of arrival. Because arrival requires a journey, and we've been skipping them. Think about the last time you were genuinely bored. Not mildly bored, where you reached for your phone within 10 seconds. Actually bored, sitting with nothing, no input, no stimulation. For most people, that hasn't happened in years. And this is where the psychology gets unnerving. Researchers at the University of Virginia ran a study where they asked participants to sit alone in a room with their thoughts for 15 minutes. No phone, no book, nothing. They also gave participants the option to self-administer a mild electric shock using a button in the room. 67% of men and 25% of women chose to shock themselves rather than sit quietly. One man shocked himself 190 times. Not because the shock felt good, because their minds could not tolerate stillness. That's not a quirk, that's a withdrawal symptom. When you train the brain to expect constant stimulation, unstructured silence starts to feel like a malfunction. Your own mind starts to feel unfamiliar, boring, something to escape. And here's the thing. Boredom is where interest is born. The moments of friction, emptiness, and waiting are where the brain generates genuine curiosity. When you eliminate those moments completely, you don't get a life that feels richer. You get a life that feels hollow. Not because nothing is happening, but because you've lost the contrast that makes things register. When's the last time you sat with nothing, no phone, no music, no background noise for even 5 minutes? Be honest. Leave it in the comments. Here's where this gets more personal than most people want it to go. There's a difference between someone who has lost the ability to feel interested and someone who has lost the sense of who they are outside of reaction. When your entire inner life is structured around responding to content, to notifications, to other people's crises, to news cycles, you stop having an interior. You have a surface. And surfaces don't feel things deeply. They reflect. Jonathan Franzen, the novelist, wrote something in an essay that was publicly mocked when it came out. He argued that the internet was making people incapable of sustained desire. Not sexual desire, but the kind of slow, private, almost embarrassing yearning that drives people to build things over years. His critics called it elitist, technophobic, out of touch. 15 years later, he looks less like an alarmist and more like someone who noticed the tide going out before anyone else felt the cold. Because the people who do feel interested, genuinely, obsessively, almost irrationally interested in things, all share one unusual behavior. They protect prolonged attention. Not productivity, not discipline, attention. They let themselves want things slowly. They read things that don't resolve in 3 minutes. They pursue questions that won't be answered today. They let problems sit overnight, unresolved. And crucially, they tolerate the discomfort of not knowing whether something will pay off. That tolerance is now rare, almost countercultural. This is the part that doesn't feel good to hear. The conventional advice for people who feel numb, disconnected, flat, is to find something to be passionate about. Try new things, break your routine, add more novelty. That advice is structurally backwards. Adding more stimulation to a system that's overwhelmed by stimulation doesn't revive interest, it deepens the numbness. You don't recover the capacity to feel interested by consuming more. You recover it by introducing deliberate deprivation. There's a practice used by monks, distance runners, and certain artists, not as a spiritual ritual, but as a functional reset, of intentionally doing something slow and difficult that offers no immediate reward. Not because suffering is virtuous, because the experience of working towards something uncertain and tolerating the absence of feedback literally rebuilds the brain's reward sensitivity. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi documented this in his research on what he called flow states. What he found was that the conditions for deep engagement aren't comfort or convenience. They're a task that slightly exceeds your current ability in an environment that removes external distraction. In other words, the feeling of being genuinely interested in something requires difficulty, not punishment, difficulty, resistance, a gap between where you are and where you're trying to go that doesn't close instantly. That's the structure of every experience that ever made you feel fully alive. Think about the last thing that made you lose track of time, not scroll for hours, but actually forget where you were. What was it? Leave that in the comments. There's a line from the philosopher Simone Weil that very few people have heard because she's not the kind of thinker who gets turned into a motivational poster. She wrote, "Attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity." She wasn't talking about productivity. She was talking about the act of caring enough about something to give it your full, undefended, undivided presence. The reason nothing feels interesting anymore isn't that the world has become less interesting. It's that interest requires something the modern environment is specifically designed to eliminate: the capacity to stay. To stay with a problem, stay with a feeling, stay with a question that doesn't resolve quickly. The people who feel most alive aren't the people who have found the most stimulating content or the most optimized routines. They're the people who have protected the ability to be genuinely affected by small things. A long conversation that goes somewhere unexpected, a book that breaks something open, a walk with no destination. The capacity for interest doesn't disappear. It goes underground when the environment stops requiring it. And it comes back, not with a new habit or a new tool, but the moment you stop giving your attention away so casually. The question isn't what you should start caring about. The question is what you've been running from by staying too busy to feel anything slowly. If this made you sit with something uncomfortable, that's the point. Subscribe if you want more of these. Not content to consume, but things worth actually thinking about.